Well, it's time now to move from one of the year's best movies to the week's worst movies introduced by Spot, Dog of the Week.
Spot the Wonder Dog. We have some great movies for you this week. Mine is a tribute of sorts to the late Bruce Lee, the kung fu star who died suddenly at the height of his fame. And the movie's called Kung Fu Master. It's being advertised as being shot in Bruce Lee style, but then what kung fu movie isn't advertised as being shot in Bruce Lee style? Bruce Lee has become in death a brand name like Walt Disney or General Motors or Betty Crocker. And so we get movies Bruce Lee style starring Bruce Lee's double and Bruce Lee's cousin and Bruce Lee's nephew and Bruce Lee's ghost. And not long ago there was even a movie starring somebody named Bronson Lee who was supposed to be half Charles Bronson and half, you guessed it, Gene, where will it all end?
Not with my film. I think we ought to call this segment Pekingese of the Week, because my dog is also a Bruce Lee ripoff called Last Fist of Fury, starring Bruce Lee. That's Lee spelled L-I. Now, why should we spend all this time, week after week, knocking inferior kung fu films? Because the people who go to see these movies are truly among the most loyal of filmgoers, and they are getting mightily ripped off. In Last Fist of Fury, Bruce L.I. tries to recover a magical pearl before an evil wizard and some American thugs get it. The thugs include a black man whose first line of dialogue goes like this: "And I knows they keep that snake pearl hidden there." Well, you should have heard the black members of the audience howl at that line. This is truly an insulting film.
Sounds like a dog for the ages.
Yes.
Hold on a minute, Gene. I think we have a guest in the balcony, and I think it might be Spot the Wonder Dog. Hello, Spot. Here to introduce the Dogs of the Week. That's as if Buck Rogers wasn't enough of a dog for this week. Anyway, I guess this time we have a neck-and-neck race. Is that right?
Yes, 2 Dracula pictures. Some people have complained that they're sick and tired of us picking so often on kung fu films as our Dog of the Week. Well, this week, thanks to George Hamilton and Susan St. James and an awful script, my dog is Love at First Bite, a toothless Dracula comedy. George Hamilton as Dracula simply doesn't know how to play comedy. You don't make fun of a comic character. It's much funnier if you play him straight. Now, George Hamilton, when he romances a woman in a contemporary disco.
Look into my eyes and tell me what you see.
They're bloodshot, and you had too much to drink last night.
What else?
I don't know. You tell me.
Love. I love you, and I can give you eternal life.
That says it all, a very unfunny film. If I hadn't been reviewing Love at First Bite, I would have left the theater at first glance.
On the other hand, Gene, what if you really wanted to sink your teeth into the vampire legends? I can't think of a worse movie to see than a new pseudo-scientific, pseudo-historic, pseudo-serious, would-be documentary named In Search of Dracula. The movie goes in search of the Dracula legend with lots of shots of castles in Romania and sinister graveyards in the Black Forest, all narrated by veteran vampire Christopher Lee, who makes a list of the things that can kill off vampires. Things like silver crosses and stakes through the heart and garlic and mirrors, innocent virgins and thorns of rose bushes. But he forgot one thing that can also kill off vampires, and that's this movie.
I bet you. Well, now here's Spot, the Wonder Dog, to remind us it's time for Dogs of the Week, where each of us picks the week's worst movies.
Right, Gene, and my dog this week is Beyond the Door, number 2, that is. The original Beyond the Door was an Italian ripoff of The Exorcist, badly dubbed into English. But Beyond the Door number 2 breaks new ground. It's an Italian ripoff of The Omen Part 2, badly dubbed into English. Let's see, it's about a little boy with strange satanic powers, and about his mother who possesses deep and dark secrets, and about how they live in a house with creaking doors and strange noises and mysterious cold basement walls and razor blades that fly through the air, and worst of all, a disembodied hand that's always clutching at the hapless mother. And if that's not bad enough, this kid amuses himself by jumping out from behind doors and scaring people. What a sense of humor, right? My advice is forget about what's behind the door, Part 1 or Part 2, and send this little monster to summer camp permanently.
Sounds like a very good idea. My dog has a basis in martial arts. It's Circle of Iron, with David Carradine of Kung Fu TV fame serving again as a great wise master trying to teach an anxious young student. The student is thrown out of school by a mean teacher for roughhousing. Then he meets Carradine. Carradine plays many roles in order to challenge his young student, but his disguises are laughable, not frightening. Carradine is a weird dude who captures flies with his bare hands, a skill he says that is not designed to impress others. I can see why. That skill puts him on a par with a no-press strip from Shell, you know. Actually, the whole movie is stuck at that level.
Okay, Gene, 2 great dogs of the week. And speaking of dogs, are you listening, Spot? Here's a present for you from a woman in Dallas, Texas, who says that you're her favorite on the program.
She sent this to you, right?
Yes, very thankful.
Oh,
Very kind of her.
Oh, look at this. It's a squeeze toy in the form of a newspaper. You're a pretty tough critic, aren't you, Spot?
Gene, we've been visited in the balcony by Spot the Wonder Dog once again, who comes whenever there's time for Dog of the Week, which is the time for the week's worst movies. And that's as if Hanover Street were not bad enough. What do you have this week?
Well, my foxhound of the fortnight is Firepower, an explosion-filled action picture about a bounty hunter's attempt to capture a Howard Hughes Robert Vesco type hiding out in the Caribbean. What makes this picture a real stinker, though, is that it contains yet another depressing performance by Sophia Loren, who plays a piece of meat as she rips her skirt to an elude attacker. She, too, is trying to get to the film's billionaire in hiding. One of his henchmen has killed her husband. To watch Sophia Loren slip away from her attacker and to run down a street is to realize that what was once a fine acting career has been trashed by roles that are nothing but window dressing for an assortment of dumb action pictures. So, as much as Firepower, what's happened to Sophia Loren's acting career is really my Dog of the Week.
Well, Gene, I think there's a pattern going on for me on this program, some kind of underlying pattern, because first I had a good thriller named Dawn of the Dead about flesh-eating zombies. Now I have one of the worst movies of all time about flesh-eating co-eds. It's called Cannibal Girls, and it's about 3 young women with unusual tastes who live in a cabin in the woods and invite strangers home for dinner. The movie is bad enough just as it is, but they've made it even more ridiculous with the sound effects. The announcer comes on and tells us that right before the really violent scenes, an alarm will sound like this. And then when the violence is over, they sound the all clear like this. So, you know, it's safe to open your eyes. My advice for the producers of this picture would be to begin it with an ooga and end it with a ding-dong so people can keep their eyes closed during the whole thing.
Ridiculous.
Hold on just a doggone minute, Gene. I think we have a visitor in the balcony, and
Yes.
sure enough, it's Spot the Wonder Dog. And whenever Spot visits us in the balcony, that means it's time for Dog of the Week, when we each pick the week's worst movies. My dog this week is one of those spaghetti westerns shot in Spain on a budget of peanuts. It's called Get Mean, and it stars Tony Anthony, and its ads are really pleasant. Go ahead, they say. You've always wanted to. Get mean. The movie itself seems to exist in some kind of a time warp. Tony Anthony plays an American cowboy, regulation. He gets mixed up with hordes of barbarians and Mongols, though, who chase him around the landscape for no particular reason, except I guess he's searching for some kind of buried treasure. And there's also a girl, of course, who gasps a lot, and she runs around in the sand. Maybe she's just turned on by the costumes, because Tony Anthony wears a regulation Clint Eastwood uniform, complete with his flat black hat and his blanket thrown over his shoulders, but the barbarians and the Mongols, they seem a little confused. They're not wearing costumes out of the same period. One of them even has a Viking helmet, one of those helmets with the horns on it, you know. I think his next rate ought to be on the wardrobe department.
Well, Roger, my dog is a film I happened to see in New York a few weeks ago. It's The Great Bank Hoax, one of those comic portraits of a small town where most everyone is corrupt. A whole bunch of bank officials plot together to pull off a perfect crime. The thieves are Burgess Meredith, Richard Basehart, Ned Beatty. After the bank robbery, they have trouble getting home.
Where's the car? We didn't bring the car. It's too risky.
How am I supposed to get home?
Where's your car?
In the garage. I came with you this morning.
Oh, I forgot.
A stirring action for a bank robbery picture. These guys should be robbing nursing homes, not banks. This is one of those rare films where the criminals are so unappealing we root for the cops. But there is a happy ending to all of this. Warner Brothers has pulled The Great Bank Hoax out of theatrical distribution. The only place it'll play now is on TV. Be on the lookout. For free, it's still a ripoff.
It's not often you get a happy ending like
Right.
that, you know. Often they just take these dogs and release them anyway, but
Easy, easy. Must have just seen Battlestar Galactica. Yes, it's Spot the Wonder Dog. That means it's time for Dog of the Week, where Roger and I pick the week's worst movies.
right you are, Gene. And my dog this week is 90 minutes of bewildering boredom, followed by 15 minutes of nauseating child monsters. It's called The Brood. Oliver Reed stars as a weird scientist who runs something called the Institute for Psychoplasmics. His patients create these bodies outside of themselves and control them through sheer mind power. And his sickest patient, Samantha Egger, has started giving birth to inhuman little clones. They're disgusting little demons, run around in snowsuits and hammer first-grade teachers to death.
Ugh.
Well, she's given birth to about a dozen of these creatures before her husband catches on. He doesn't catch on real quick. And then there's a bloody and a reprehensible conclusion. Why do so many horror movies take kids and make them into monsters? Maybe it's because they're too small to fight back.
A good point. Now, my dog this week is an Anthony Quinn picture. Guess which one?
I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's not easy. He's made a lot of bad pictures lately. This one's The Passage, a creaky old World War II story with Quinn as a French mountain guide leading a German scientist and his family through the Pyrenees Mountains away from Nazi soldiers. The action is excruciatingly slow-paced for an adventure film. Now watch how slow this scene is.
That is the mountain.
Yes, you're right. That is the mountain. We get a shot of the mountain. A shot of the people looking at the mountain. A shot of the mountain. A shot of the people looking at the mountain. More people looking at the mountain. And now the mountain again. Come on, somebody. Even the mountain. Move. A few weeks ago, I knocked Sophia Loren for making dumb action pictures that traded on her once valid reputation as a fine actress. I'd like to give Anthony Quinn a similar shot this time. He hasn't been able to improve or even come close to matching his Zorba the Greek role, and he made that picture 15 years ago.
So much for the dogs this week. Let's take another look at the major movies on the program.